I'm very honored and happy to be back in Virginia. Actually, I spent 2 years at George Mason University for my master's, conflict resolution studies over there. And yeah, but that was long time ago, 20 years ago. But yeah, a little bit far from here, but still, I'm very much pleased to be back in Virginia and honored to be here today. And thank you so much for extending the invitation and giving me a chance to talk about so-called climate security in Asia and the Pacific. This is a quite emerging topic in Asia and the Pacific. Actually, the climate security is a topic the UN has been discussing for last, let's say, 1 decade, 2 decades, mainly at New York level, headquarter level, trickle down to Africa, Middle East first. But then Asia and the Pacific didn't draw adequate attention until recently. And I joined this office, Bangkok Regional Hub, UNDP office, August 2022, 1.5 years ago. I was the first one who was assigned to look into this topic for the Asia and the Pacific. Before I joined that office, none of us actually follow up on this topic. So I'm very much pleased to share kind of the first hand information I collected last 1 year plus. So this is an outline of my presentation today. Let me start with the definition of climate security and followed by some discussion at the UN Security Council on this topic and regional trend of the climate security in Asia and the Pacific. We have some examples, project implemented in the Asia and the Pacific. So I will share the experiences in the Philippines and the Pacific. And eroding nationhood, this is also another very concerning topic from the case of Pacific. Climate or environmental justice or litigation in the region. Although I'm not an expert on this topic, for the school and your expertise, I will share some knowledge. And research and the self-learning material I will introduce. And then the last slide as next steps. This is my kind of recommendation or proposal. So the climate security, actually definition of climate security, there's none or a lot of actually definitions and there's no UN definition as such. But I found this is kind of straightforward, easy to understand. So let me share this definition. Climate-related security risks are understood as the excessive adverse impacts of climate change on, first, security of the state, so-called national security element. The second, international peace and security. And the third, human security, which consists of the economic, food, health, environmental, personal, community, and political dimensions. And this dimension, I mean the human security dimension, is very important when we talk about climate security. As other colleagues, I mean the speakers already emphasized, so-called climate change doesn't lead to conflict directly, but usually impact on those aspects of the human security first. And then in some cases, escalated to the national security or international security dimensions. So when we talk about policy making, research and programming, we really need to bear in mind and bring in those elements of the human security dimensions. And as I said in the beginning, the so-called Security Council has been discussing this topic since 2007, and several resolutions have been adopted already specifically acknowledging the climate security as a national security threat. All of them are talking about, I mean, focusing on the African countries so far. But then in 2021, 2, 3 years ago, actually, there was an attempt. The climate security focus resolution was drafted by some member states, and it was discussed, but eventually vetoed by some country, and also supported by some other countries. And Johnson already highlighted that argument. Basically, the so-called securitization of the climate is not appropriate from their perspective, but also lack of evidences between the climate changes and conflict was not actually obvious to those countries. So the lesson learned from this experience for all of us actually is that we need to collect more evidences, scientific evidences, out of the researches on the causal relations between these two factors. And this is a heat map indicating so-called susceptibility to climate changes and fragility. So the darker color means the more fragile to the climate change as well as climate security risks. And obviously, African continent is darker than any other regions. However, when you look into more detail, like in the Asia and the Pacific, some of the countries are equally dark. And in fact, Asia and the Pacific is equally vulnerable to climate changes and some security hazards. But how vulnerable? According to the Global Climate Risk Index, 6 countries from Asia and the Pacific are listed among top 10 countries vulnerable to climate risks. And this region, Asia and the Pacific, of course, hosts huge population. 50% of the global population reside in this region. And the region is known for long coastlines with the industries and supply chain concentrated in the region. Low-lying islands, millions of low-lying islands and the coastal areas. All of them are very much vulnerable to the flooding, typhoons, cyclones, and also don't forget the sea level rise in coming decades. When it comes to the Himalayan region, this is another area we have most concern. The glaciers are melting, and it could cause really tremendous impact on the region. In fact, 2 billion of people actually depend on the water sources coming from the Himalayan region. If the glacier melting is fast, faster than before, and then more flooding might occur. And in the coming decades, some scientists predict that it might dry up or about to dry up, which could cause catastrophic impacts on the region. And these 2 billion people start migrating to other regions, which could cause tremendous security hazards. And greenhouse gas emissions, yes, Asia and the Pacific is not only the victim of climate changes, but also actually responsible for that. 50% of global gas emissions coming from this region, out of which actually driven by coal-fire power. 40% of the energy demand is actually produced by coal-fire power in this region. Is there any security hazard? Yes, I mean the national security hazard. Yes, through our researches, Philippines, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, we have already collected some data on the so-called nexus of climate impact, displacement, and violence or violent extremism. And Pakistan, Myanmar, Afghanistan, we are conducting similar researches, and we suspect similar cases will be reported. And this is a kind of map of, indicating, describing the diverse nature of the climate extremes and the environmental and the security impacts in the region. And what I want to say most is the diversity of the nature of these kind of challenges in the region. Starting from the right, purple circle, actually right in the middle, in the Pacific and the Maldives, Bangladesh and Vietnam. These are the countries which have been heavily impacted already by sea level rise, and as a result, loss of livelihood and the displacement of people have been reported. The green circle, the long green circle, indicates typhoon and cyclone prone areas, which cause massive displacement and regularly, and already created tension between the migrated people and the host communities. In the Philippines, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and the Pacific are the major hotspots. Red circle indicates Himalayan glacier melt. I'm not gonna repeat. Brown circle indicates the so-called hotspots of the drought, which cause food security, insecurity, and massive displacement again in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran. And the dark green circle in the middle indicates the area of deforestation. Of course, deforestation is witnessed many other regions, but this is a heavily impacted region. Nepal, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. Because of that conflict over natural resources and land issues have been repeatedly reported. Change in the river flow. I think some of the colleagues also mentioned this topic, especially Mekong River is our major concern. But in the South Asia, like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, there are other major so-called transboundary rivers which face the similar challenges. So in the Mekong River, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and China, especially lower areas of like Cambodia, Vietnam, already witness so-called livelihood issues, loss of livelihood, especially among the fishery communities and the agriculture communities. And the tension has risen between those communities and the government. And the pink circle indicates climate-induced displacement, which already trigger so-called marginalization of youth population mainly, and some of them already joined the violent conflict or radicalized groups, violent extremist groups in the Philippines, Indonesia, and Papua New Guinea. So in order to address these multiple challenges, we started some projects, implementing projects on the ground through our country offices in those countries. Let me share one of the two examples today. One is from Philippines, and the other one from the Pacific. In the Philippines, the Bangsamoro region, the southern part of Philippines, this region is known for long-term conflict, like 5 decades of conflict until 2014, because of the historically marginalized and some religious difference and other social differences. Factors. But in 2014, the peace agreement was signed between the rebel group and the government. And now they are implementing so-called peace processes. But last several years, this region, Bangsamoro region, has become more susceptible to the climate change, such as typhoon, flooding, and drought. And that also caused or led to a displacement, as I said before, the massive displacement to other regions, and the loss of livelihood and income, food insecurity, land conflict, all culminated into some violent issues, a violent conflict, and some of them joined the violent extremism after getting radicalized. In order to address these challenges in the Bangsamoro region, we started the project activities as follows, starting from field assessment on the climate security risks, followed by the capacity development training for the authority, these so-called vulnerable groups, and also provided livelihood support, as you can see on the left, so-called solar ice making machine to create a kind of livelihood, alternative livelihood for those who have been affected. And political documents or strategy, so-called development plan, Bangsamoro development plan, adaptation plan, women, peace and security, regional action plan, all fundamental political documents or strategies have been supported by, development have been supported by UNDP, and all luckily integrated so-called climate security angles in those documents, which could pave the way for the further actions down the line. In the Pacific, they have a very unique context and facing the challenges. We targeted these 3 low-lying atoll nations, Kiribati, Marshall Islands, and Tuvalu. These countries have very low altitude, only several meters high, so they are facing the so-called existential threat due to the sea level rise, even the some meters height. That will be a very critical issues for them. And the typhoon, drought, salinization already impacted agriculture, drinking water, and livelihood, mainly in the coastal areas. And the displacement is also another issue. They migrated to other regions, but they faced a lack of alternative livelihood where they moved, and again caused the friction with the host community residents. Then addressing these challenges, we came up with this project action, the action plans. Started with the advocacy on the climate security risks with the so-called Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, which is a regional intergovernmental body for this Pacific Island nations, and provided the climate resilient livelihood, so-called solar round vertical aeroponic gardens, as you can see on the left, and awareness raising on climate security risks, and finally provided so-called climate security related mediation training for those who have been affected by climate security challenges. Eroding nationhood. This means basically like a sea level rise is as an existential threat, as I said, to Pacific small islands, developing states, so-called SIDS. But what if a nation goes under the sea after a decade or so due to the sea level rise? And how will we define its state sovereignty and maritime boundary? No one knows the solution. No one knows answer, because no actually international treaty or laws define that kind of scenario. But already some countries started debating this topic, and one of the example is Tuvalu Digital Sovereignty Initiative, so-called digital state concept, has been discussed. And what does it mean? They basically preserve all the administrative data, as well as cultural heritage, historic data, information in the digital archive, so that no matter what happened to them, and no matter where they eventually ended up, they still have some access to these data, and they can claim this sovereignty to be preserved. But of course, this is a kind of innovative, very much innovative thinking. We need to tackle some challenges actually to make it happen. What are the main challenges? First of all, the convention. What kind of convention needs to be changed? which countries is going to host this digital state and the people migrated, and how to determine it. What are the criteria? We need to really come up with this. And UN should help develop a global cyber governance. Those are the questions and challenges we need to really answer. Again, I'm not the expert on this topic, environmental or climate justice and litigation, but so bear with me. Let me share my very shallow understanding of this topic. What I understood on the climate or environmental justice, there were two symbolic stepping stones for the UN in the last 2 years. In 2022, UN General Assembly adopted a resolution declaring access to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a universal human right. And last year, again, the UN General Assembly voted to ask the International Court of Justice to clarify the obligations of states in relation to climate change and the legal consequences if those obligations are not complied with. In the region, Asian Pacific region, climate environment litigation is on the rise. Last several years, the cases have risen 185%. Australia is spearheading this effort, and followed by Philippines, South Korea, and Japan. But still, compared to the US and Europe, Asia still lags behind. And let me share the two prominent cases from the region, one from Indonesia and one from Thailand. In Indonesia, deforestation case, Supreme Court ruled actually in favor of indigenous people against the pulp and paper company over deforestation and peatland destruction. In Thailand, air pollution is a very serious concern nowadays, last few years. So the Central Court ordered the government to take stronger measures to address the air pollution following the lawsuit filed by environmental organizations. And climate change and public policy and corruption. This is also quite interesting topic. Pakistan, as you might be aware, 2 years ago, there was a massive flood affecting the country. It is said 1/3 of country was flooded, and the Pakistan blamed basically the development countries on the greenhouse gas emissions. Not their fault, but developing countries' fault. So as a result, the loss and damage fund was developed, adapted. Yes, the discussion of the loss and damage was quite not new, but eventually, 2 years ago in COP27, this loss and damage fund was adopted. I think they're triggered by this flood in Pakistan. But there is a counter argument. This was actually I heard from the NGO in Pakistan. They said that yes, flood is a natural disaster, but also man-made disaster. Why? Because if construction of buildings or land usage were properly regulated, if the flood-prone areas was also properly managed, and if people are not allowed to live in those regions, areas, and also corruption was properly controlled, then that disaster most likely could have been mitigated. And this argument, counter-argument, sounds to me also very valid, but I'm not in the position where I cannot really judge which one is correct or more valid, but I want to put on the table for maybe further discussion. This is a kind of summary of the so-called climate security related research already published in the for the AP region. I'm not going to details, but I will share this slide later with you so that you can click the picture of this report to jump to this report. But what I want to say here, emphasize here, is that we still need more researches for the region. And I really count on the academic institutes, academia's help in this field. Also, those who want to who want to study more on this topic, this is a material I found it very constructive, well structured. I strongly recommend to register this so you can learn more about this topic. Lastly, this is kind of my personal proposal on the kind of next steps, especially with the academic institutes on this topic. The first, research on climate security. As I said, I will not repeat it. Awareness raising on climate, environmental justice, and litigation. I have already said that it's on the rise, but still we are lagging behind. So I fully count on the support from the other regions, especially the US, to lend the support to the legal professional, civil society organization, and citizens in the Asia and the Pacific. Climate security forecasting model, which the UNDP Asia and Pacific is trying to develop now, collecting data on climate changes, vulnerability, and displacement. These can help predict the so-called hotspots where to be affected in the coming years and decades. And designing this model, we still also need some support from academia. Networking among academic institutes, legal experts, civil society, first between among the Asia and the Pacific region, but we want to invite the other support from the other regions like US, Europe, and other regions, even Africa, who have like-minded or specific expertise on the related topics, especially climate security, climate justice, litigation. Actually, UNDP, our office started a project called JIN ASEAN, Judicial Integrity Network. This is started within the ASEAN region so far, but I think it should be expanded to invite other regions' support, especially the US. So let me stop here, and thank you so much for listening.